Hello everybody. I just wanted to take a minute and express some of my feelings and thoughts about the whole Korryn Gaines situation in Baltimore. If you don't know who she is, she was pulled over by police lawfully because she either didn't have tags or she didn't have a license plate. I've heard both. But what is clear is they had probable cause for pulling her over. When they came up to the window, she was immediately combative with them. They asked her for the registration and her driver's license. She refused to give it to them. Kept asking for something called delegation of authority. I don't know, it was really the first time I'd heard that, really. Kept asking for it. The cop was showing her every single piece of identification he had, all of his various law enforcement identifications or whatever. She just wasn't being satisfied with any of those. She was saying at some point that she doesn't participate in those laws or these laws or those laws or something. Like she was trying to pick and choose what laws would apply to her or whatever. This is not acceptable behavior. She had her 2 children in the backseat of her car. This is the type of behavior that if anybody committed this behavior, anyone in the world commits this behavior with a police officer, they are very likely going to have a bad experience. You know, it's not like they were pulling her over for no reason. See, this is her trying to, like, basically escape dealing with her responsibilities by trying to turn it into some kind of a civil rights issue, and that's just ridiculous. So these cops were very patient with her, and the whole thing goes on for a long time, and eventually they pulled her out of the car after she had told her kids, if they pull you out of the car, that you better fight, and that they were going to kill mommy today, and all these things that she was saying, all these horrific things that she was saying to her children. These are not right. It's not right to do that. She's not a hero in any sense. She, had she been, being, harassed by cops for no good reason, maybe then. But this case, no. She was trying to escape her own responsibilities by turning it into some kind of a civil rights issue, which it just didn't apply. So she gets taken out of the car, she gets arrested, all that. She gets a court date. She eventually misses this court date, and she gets a warrant issued. Now, this is just a warrant for a traffic warrant. The cops had this meeting with her already when they pulled her over. They know she's, at the very least, she's mentally unstable. So they know this at this point after pulling her over. When she doesn't appear in court, a warrant is issued. Eventually they go to serve the warrant to her at her apartment. They get there, nobody answers the door, but they can hear her and people in there, and so they eventually get the apartment owner to come with the key, open up the locks, but there was still a chain, so the door was kicked in, and when they got in there, she was there with cradling her son and pointing a shotgun basically at them. So they went back out. This whole standoff happens. Now, eventually, she threatens them. She makes a verbal threat or whatever to an officer who's trying to walk away from the doorway at some point after he came up and was trying to talk to her. And she made some kind of verbal threat to him or whatever, and I guess he reacted and he fired a shot. When he fired a shot, she began firing. Another officer then began firing at her and fired 3 shots at her. And somehow in all of this melee, the 5-year-old kid got hit. He got wounded in, I guess, the arm, from what I'm hearing. Now, I do not condone Korryn Gaines' actions at all. I do not approve of Korryn Gaines' actions at all. She was completely in the wrong in trying to turn everything into some kind of a civil rights issue or a civil liberties issue, or, just completely unwilling to own her own responsibility. So, and just using that as a scapegoat, and it's not right. So, the one thing that I would say about this, and I will say this, law enforcement in this case, they are not to blame. They are not at all to blame. They did what they were supposed to do. They did their job according to standard operating procedure. or SOP. So there is absolutely no blame to go around on the cops. I really do feel bad for the cops. First of all, I feel bad for the one guy who fired the first shot, because he's always going to be the guy who fired the first shot that started it. He's always going to remember that. But now, I don't think he should be punished or anything. He was in a very tense situation, and he got scared and he reacted. You know, it's understandable. But I feel bad for him, because he's always going to remember that that whole thing started because of a shot he fired. It's unfortunate. Also, I feel bad for that officer who ended up, you know, killing her. Because, hey, trust me, no officer goes out at the beginning of the day thinking, oh, you know, I'd love to put 3 rounds in somebody today. No, they don't do that. They don't like that. They want to go home to their kids and have their normal families. Most cops want to go home to their kids and their wives and have normal families and do normal things and not have to think about horrific stuff like that. You know, so I feel bad for that cop as well. It's unfortunate that he had to be put in that situation. That is why I'm wondering why, in all of this, we've established that Korryn Gaines was not very intelligent about this situation, that she was not likely to be talked down, that she, you know, judging by the way that she acted in the car, they pretty much could guess what was going to happen with her in this apartment when there's 2 kids in there, other people possibly potentially in the other apartments around them, you know, that could have possibly got caught in the crossfire maybe, you know, unless they were all evacuated. Maybe they were. Maybe they got them all evacuated by the time this all went down, and I sure hope they did. But then there's still those 2 kids in there, you know, and I can't help but wonder if maybe there should be some kind of something done where cops can take a different approach with a situation like this, with somebody like this that is clearly pushing them to the point like this and basically owning them. You know, it's sad. She pushed this right where she wanted it to go, and the cops played right into her hand. That is the part that doesn't sit well with me. That she was able to manipulate this situation, and she was able to do this, and this, it's completely unacceptable. But I'm thinking that it would have been smarter, because she didn't want to fire that gun. She wasn't really wanting to fire that gun. She was sitting there just, you know, wanting them to go away for a very, very long time. I think had they maybe backed off, they could have easily tracked this girl on social media. This girl is obviously all over social media. They could have tracked her. They could have known. They could have investigated what she does, where she goes, and where they could have most easily apprehended her with some plainclothes officers or something like that. Something that would have involved a lot less, you know, county money because of a public standoff like that and a shootout that resulted. You know, that's all kinds of money that the county is going to have to pay now because of that happening. Not to mention all the officers that were there, all the officers that got called in, you know, for maybe tactical on that situation, and da-da-da-da-da, and on and on and on it goes. Whereas if they just backed off and watched her social media for a week, they'd have known exactly where they could get her no fuss, maybe in 2 weeks later, when she thought the heat had died down and she was no longer, you know, scared or whatever, and they could have got her easily without a 5-year-old getting shot and her getting killed. Now, I understand a lot of people don't feel sorry for her, that she got killed, and maybe a lot of people a lot of people think that, you know, hey, that's fine, she kind of deserved it. Well, I don't know. I would have preferred to see her see justice. I'd prefer to seen her have to go to jail or possibly maybe a psychiatric hospital. I'm not sure. Maybe she would need to be evaluated, but I'm sorry, this girl definitely wasn't quite thinking fully. I mean, I think it's pretty obvious. She had a very misguided kind of conception of kind of the way things work. Because, and I will say this, because apparently when the cops came to get her boyfriend one time, when he had, I guess, hit her or assaulted her in some way or something, it was some kind of domestic violence, she didn't mind the cops then. She was talking to them, helping them do whatever when they were coming to get him out of her hair. So she didn't have any problem with the cops then. It's only when, you know, the cops came, you know, cops pulled her over in her car, you know, because she was driving without tags or a license plate, whichever one it ends up being. And that's because that's her. She's responsible for that. So all of a sudden it's a civil rights issue or a civil liberties issue or whatever it is. So, you know, that's not right. She was definitely not, you know, she was definitely not thinking clearly. And that much is obvious. And I just think that somebody who's not thinking clearly shouldn't be able to escalate a situation like this to that level. Especially when you think about the fact that this all originated over some traffic warrants. It's kind of silly. So, I don't know. Obviously, there would have to be some kind of legislation because standard operating procedure is there for a reason. And the cops have to follow it for a reason. That's fully understandable. And I'd like to reiterate in this, because I don't know if maybe none of people have said it or not, but, you know, law enforcement was not to blame in this. They were absolutely not to blame in this. And I feel sorry for Korryn Gaines, and I really feel sorry for her son. Because this situation escalated to the point that it did. He is going to forever remember the police as the people who killed his mom over some traffic warrants. I know it's not that simple, but it's going to be for him. It really is. So that's basically all I have to say about this topic. You know, it's unfortunate, it's horrific. It's definitely, I think it's definitely going to be creating conversation for a while. And I think people are going to be talking about this and you know, how it could possibly go down differently. But maybe they won't. Maybe you know, maybe just hitting the situation with a bigger hammer is just the way to go for most people. So I don't know, but I'll let everybody make their own decisions on that. But I just wanted to offer my 2 cents. Thank you very much.